Today, I'm going to be talking about the book Rich Dad Poor Dad and Robert Kiyosaki, and whether or not the book is a scam, whether or not he's a scam, whether or not that even matters. I'm John Sonmez from BulldogMindset.com. On this channel, I teach you how to go from the victim mindset and develop the Bulldog mindset, how to build mental toughness, how to become stronger, how to build wealth, and to become successful. Today, what we're going to be talking about is a book that many of you have heard, many of you have read, called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I got some interesting comments. So I did an interview with Dan Lok. You can check out the link up here and in the description. And in that interview, both Dan and I both talked about Rich Dad Poor Dad. Okay, he talked about that being one of the books that changed his mindset, and I also mentioned that it changed my mindset. In fact, I ended up buying gumball machines and looking for other ways to build assets and to build passive income. Once I read that book, it really did fundamentally change my mind. And so I got a comment on that from Mike here, who emailed me, which I'm going to answer here. And Mike basically expressed his contempt, I would say, for the book and for me mentioning that book. And I responded in a not very nice way, as I frequently do on YouTube. And and so Mike, though, had the tact. I look now that he's not trolling. Okay, he actually has some valid concerns, and he is well read on the subject. So good. So that's good. Okay. But it doesn't change my opinion on this. Okay. And so I thought, now's a good time to respond to Mike, since he emailed me here, and to do a video and tell you guys exactly what do I think about Rich Dad Poor Dad and Robert Kiyosaki. And, whether or not the advice in the book is good, whether or not we should care about the reputation of the author or not, and some of that stuff. So anyway, let's start with Mike's email. So Mike says, I think that the work you did for Pluralsight and Simple Programmer are fantastic. I had to provide some help to a number of friends that were seduced by Rich Dad Poor Dad and the author. As with good code, anything that cannot stand scrutiny probably has issues. The general advice presented in the video with your millionaire friend may be 100% legitimate. I do not take issue with that. The following link gives a good start on the Rich Dad Poor Dad saga. So he gives a link here. I've actually read most of the content of this link. It's pretty long. But even before I read that, I was pretty familiar with this. I've talked about Rich Dad Poor Dad enough that I've heard the controversy surrounding that book, and there is plenty, and about the author. Okay, so none of this is really super new to me. Okay, not everyone that watches your videos may have the skill or experience to evaluate truth or exaggerate information as you would, or that have been in the business world for a while. Best of luck in your continued endeavors, Mike. Okay, so Mike, thank you, first of all, for having the tact to write an email like that and in a civilized way, and to present. I understand where you're coming from now. You're generally concerned about people and about them falling into the spell of a charlatan. Okay, so good. I'm in the same place with you on that. Now, here's the thing, though. Here's what I would say. If we go back in time, also at the time that I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which was a long time ago, there weren't a lot of books. I mean, today, right, there's equivalent books that teach a similar message and maybe even do a better job of it, honestly, right? Obviously there's books that have been around for a while, like The Richest Man in Babylon, but I mean, who was reading that back then? How would I even know about that book? I recommend it. Go ahead and read that. It's a great book. It's a nice short read. It's wisdom for the ages. Great stuff. Maybe not as specific as Rich Dad Poor Dad, but the principles are sound. Better ones today: Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco, Unscripted by MJ DeMarco. Go check those out. The link's in the description as well. And those are great books, okay? And they basically say a very similar thing to what Rich Dad Poor Dad, what he said in that, maybe in a little bit of a different way, okay? And so if you go back in time, like I said, when I first read that book, this was a life-changing book for me, okay? Because there is pre-reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, John, and post. And, I think if you have your eyes open, if you understand entrepreneurship and business and assets and investments, then there's nothing foundational or groundbreaking in that book. But for me, when I read that book, being fairly young, thinking paycheck to paycheck, thinking about, like, if I make more money, I can buy a more expensive car payment, I can have a more expensive house payment, right? I can spend this money, like thinking about income that way, and thinking about working a job my whole life. That book fundamentally changed that, because after that, I started thinking about assets. I started thinking about how can I take the money that I'm working for, invest it in assets that produce money, and live off of that money. and have passive income and have true wealth. So it totally changed my perspective in thinking of things as either an asset or an expense. Okay. And to see that as an asset or liability, right? Basically. And so that fundamentally changed the way that I just thought about life and thought about investing and everything. Like it is really, really valuable advice. Now, as far as the author, okay, Robert Kiyosaki, lot of controversy surrounding him. I agree. Okay. I don't know what the claims are. I mean, I don't know the truth of the claims. I don't think anyone truly knows. And there's definitely enough bad stuff said about him and enough facts that are out there that it's probably pretty conceivable that he's done some dishonest things. He's misrepresented himself. Okay. And some of the advice that he gives is just downright wrong and rotten. Okay, that's fine. It's fine. I'm not going to argue those points. Okay, because there's no point. Right. Again, I don't know the guy. I'm not going to judge the guy. I'm just saying that there's probably some skeletons in his closet that seem like it's pretty legitimate that people have done enough research to say, okay, there's some problems. Okay, but most people have that. All right, and again, maybe his is malicious because he's intentional because he's just trying to utilize he's misrepresenting facts in order to make more money. Totally possible and totally conceivable. Doesn't change my opinion of the book. And again, we could say, well, John, the book has a lot of factual errors. It has a lot of bad advice in there. Agreed. In fact, it is not only does it have a lot of factual errors and what you could call bad advice, it's missing the key piece of advice. Okay, this was the problem when I first read the book. It's missing how do you actually fucking do this? What is an actual asset? How do you actually find one? How do you actually build one? How do you actually do this stuff that he's talking about? He says that you need to be a business owner, not an operator and not an employee, but how do you actually start one and how do you become one? And how do you find these assets? It doesn't tell you jack shit about that. Okay, that was my biggest complaint when I read the book. I had to figure that shit out on my own. But it changed my mindset. It told me that this was possible. And this is what was key about it. So again, not the perfect book. Okay, the book is lacking in many ways. Okay, I think the story of the rich dad, poor dad is a powerful one. And that is enough to change people's minds. And that's why there's value in this, is because it reached me where I was at. I wasn't as sophisticated. I didn't understand the things I understand now, right? A different message would not have reached me. And so I think that this is a kind of a dumbed down message, and it is necessary to reach certain people. Now, maybe there's some other books, like I said, and there's other ways to reach that information, and that's fine. But at least at the very core, like the concept was important. And again, I don't care necessarily about the author. Right now, if I'm going to choose a book, I'm probably going to choose a book based on some degree the integrity of the author, okay, and their credibility, okay. But if someone's giving good advice, it really doesn't matter. There's a lot of people that give great advice that can't follow it themselves, that are fucked up, okay? Some of the best coaches are fat fucking idiots, okay, that couldn't play a sport or couldn't do the thing that they're coaching at all, but they know how to coach because they know exactly what it is to fuck up because they are a fuck up. So you can't really judge, again, a book or wisdom by the mouth it comes out of. Wisdom is wisdom, okay? And again, not saying everything in the book is wisdom, not saying that there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying that there's some value here, and I'm not going to just throw out the book and reject it and say just because, maybe the author is a charlatan. Now, with that said, like, again, if someone is being seduced by Rich Dad Poor Dad and all the stuff, and thinking that this is a problem with a lot of people. I mean, even some of you that follow me, okay, and some of you that I see this with Dan Lok's audience as I was working with them, like, okay, it's good to follow and to get advice from mentors and from people that understand and know things and that you can learn from, but do not worship them. Okay, don't worship me. Don't worship Dan Lok. Don't worship Robert Kiyosaki, and just believe every single word that they say is gospel. It's not. Okay, that's a problem. And so the same thing happens with Tony Robbins. Again, like, I'm a fan of Tony Robbins. I like him. Okay, but I also dislike him. I dislike a lot of his sales techniques. I think that some of the stuff that he says is just downright not right at all, right? But I think there's a huge amount of value in some of the stuff he says. I mean, he changed my life for in many ways, okay? So there's huge value, and I still point people to Tony Robbins, to his seminars, knowing that they're going to get some pretty nasty sales techniques and some nasty shit, and there's a lot of cult people in there that are drinking the Kool-Aid, but because there's still a huge amount of value in there. So, I think Mike's point about not everyone that watches your videos may have the skill or experience to evaluate the truth or desired information is valid, but it's not an excuse, right? You, the viewer, you're responsible for taking information and evaluating it. Don't just accept it as gospel, okay? You've got to evaluate. You've got to think about these things, okay? And you should integrate it into your life. You shouldn't just blindly follow someone. So, if you read Rich Dad Poor Dad and you get involved with Robert Kiyosaki's, empire, and you just drink the Kool-Aid straight up, you're gonna be setting yourself up for a fall. Okay, it happens. People do this all the time with multi-level marketing, all this kind of bullshit. People are actually able to build legitimate, valuable businesses out of multi-level marketing. I fucking hate multi-level marketing, but the people that are level-headed and don't drink the Kool-Aid are able to actually operate it. Okay, I still think it's a very dishonest and fucking bullshit business, but I can't knock it to a huge degree, because it can be valuable. It can teach you some valuable skills as well. So it all comes down to that, and that's really my opinion on it. And like I said, not the best book in history for sure. Not a book that, it's not even one of the top books I recommend, but I'm not going to bash the book and say that's horrible, because it changed my life. It changed Dan Lok's life, right? It changed a lot of people's lives. And, at the time, it was really, really good. And I even bought the Cash Flow 101 game. That was valuable. It taught me some valuable lessons about investing and simulating investments and real estate, and made it fun. And he did a good job of making education fun, about finances, and telling a good story. And so there's a lot of really good things that he did with the book, even if the guy was totally dishonest, which I'm not saying that he was or wasn't, but there's plenty of evidence. You guys can look it up and read it yourself. But you just can't. I'll end on this note, okay? Which is this: is one, use your judgment, okay? Don't take what anyone says as gospel, okay, including myself, right? Especially not me. The second thing I'll say is this: don't waste your time. Okay, don't waste your time. Like, you can do, like, I look at this blog post this guy wrote, and he does so much research on researching why Robert Kiyosaki is a scam, and I'm like, what benefit is that? Like, I mean, he's selling some books on his side. I suppose that he's doing this, as a business, but you can't invest. You're going to have to trust your gut to some degree. You can't investigate everyone and look for, like, if you take the magnifying glass under all of your heroes, you're going to find that they all are flawed. They all are flawed. Okay. And many of them are doing things for the wrong reasons. They have the wrong motives, but it doesn't matter. You don't have time to investigate all this shit. Do your due diligence. Don't invest or, give people money that are going to rip you off. But at the same time, when it comes down to like a fucking book, if you don't like the book, don't read the book. If you don't like the advice in the book, don't pay attention to the advice in the book. But really, like, attacking the author and spending all that, like, it's not worth your emotional effort. It's not worth your time. It's not worth the fucking heartache of it. Like, it's just not worth it. Like, just move on. Go find someone that you do trust, or find some advice that you do like, and follow that. Don't fucking waste your time. Like, there's things that are productive and useful to you, and there's things that aren't. So that's just my opinion on it. And again, I never met the guy. That's the other thing is too, like, maybe you meet Robert Kiyosaki and you're like, oh, this guy's awesome. He's great. Maybe he's got a side to the story that you haven't heard. Like, it's not even worth your time to worry about this shit. Don't sweat it. Take care, and I will see you next time.